Hello. Sorry for the little cutting out of the connection. Let's just try and get things started again. Let me know when you're here, or I'll see some of you. Um, Sorry for that little problematic disconnection that happened there for a moment. Hello, everybody. Are you here? Just a couple. Let the others know that we're back live, that I have a new stream running. Sorry for the little temporary outage. I had to switch to mobile data. It's something that can happen, as you guys know. It seems like for whatever reason, it always affects this hour, 9 to 9:50. I'm not having the same problem as much in some of my other classes, but whatever, guys. It's all good. We're just working through it. And it hasn't really affected the pace or flow of our lectures to the most part. We haven't fallen behind or anything, so we're all good. I'm just going to wait a moment for more of us to arrive to the new stream. Thanks again, guys. It seemed like Eddie got interested in joining for a second, which that's kind of fun. No, it's not Peach, Claire. This is Eddie, the brother. This is a big boy. You can tell it's him because of his white belly and stuff. That's a different coloring than Peachy, but he's also like significantly heavier. He's a big kitty. So just going to take a few seconds. We have a few more notes on this. There's about 9 of us that are here now. Maybe let me try and get people back in by sending a quick Canvas message, if I can, to the group. But if you guys have any other kind of like connection outside of the lecture, like Discord or a group chat or something, maybe you can direct a few of us back to the meeting. And I'm just going to try on my end to double that with a quick note on Canvas. So hold on while I send it. Okay, so hopefully that'll help a little bit. And from there, I'm just going to continue. We'll get the recording either way, so it'll be all good. Yeah, Chase, this is actually Eddie. So Peach and Eddie, I got 2 cats. This is the brother of Peachy. So he's a okay. We're talking about this drowning child scenario as we explain and explore the first premise of the argument. And I saw your guys' comments actually after I had to reconstitute the stream, so I could see that everyone understood. It's still an obligation, right? Still an obligation in the second case where you got to now mess up your clothes. So the point here that he's making is that when you can prevent something bad and it doesn't require a sacrifice that rises to the same level of the thing that you're trying to stop, then you should prevent the bad thing. So, like, I guess, when would you not be obligated to save this? When would you not be obligated? Yeah, when you're iced out. Okay, yeah, so you got all your chains of jewelry. But for real, though, when would you not have the obligation to assist? Well, if, for example, it would require your own death. So, like, if getting into this muddy water, you start to see that there's sharks circling the boy, or that there's, like, little lasers from snipers on towers all around, well, you know, in that case, you don't have to make the sacrifice because the value of what you prevent is canceled out by what you have to give to prevent it. But when the sacrifice does not rise to the level of the preventable bad thing, then it's a net gain of utility, basically, when you prevent it, because it's a worse thing that you're preventing than whatever the sacrifice was that you had to do to prevent it from happening. So now, looking at the big argument, he's making the case that absolute poverty clearly is a bad thing. I don't think anyone could deny that. And with the third premise, he's saying, yes, we could prevent some absolute poverty by diverting some of our surplus wealth that we would otherwise spend on non-essential luxuries to the third world poor for the sake of poverty relief. And if we did that, it would not be a sacrifice that's as important at all as the reduction of absolute poverty that would be the outcome. So here's what he said. He said, our affluence means that we have income we can dispose of without giving up basic necessities of life, and we can use that to reduce absolute poverty. Just how much we think we're obligated to give up depends on what we consider to be of comparable significance. Expensive clothes, expensive dinners, sophisticated stereo, overseas holidays, second car, larger house, private schools, da da da. For a utilitarian, none of these is likely to be of comparable significance to the reduction of absolute poverty. So there you've heard his argument. Now, to finish the case of his essay, to finish his whole essay, he reports on some objections to that argument. So he's still not quite done. He wants to tell you who or why would people criticize that argument. And so I'm just going to quickly mention for you this grab bag of objections to that argument that he refers to. After he talks about those objections, he quickly tries to rebut them one last time. So let's now mention what are objections to the just now described obligation to assist argument. I'll just abbreviate OTA, obligation to assist argument. Now, from some of you, you might feel that the objections are stronger than the argument itself, and that's a fair reaction, but we're just going to have to know both sides, and so let's hear these objections. One of them, I'm going to create like little names and titles for these objections to make them more memorable. One of them, our own. Taking care of our own. Based on the name, it's kind of a hint as to the way the objection is going to go. So imagine that a person does not find favor with the obligation to assist argument, and then they give this basic idea as their objection. What do you think is the objection? Well, they would say this. The argument says I have a moral obligation to give assistance and aid to the global third world poor. But one could say, no, I don't have that obligation. If I have any obligation, okay, Ryan, yeah, hopefully it's easy enough for you to read. Others can let me know how the clarity looks. Let me actually do one thing very quick just so I can monitor it too. Yeah, it's a little bit blurry, I understand, and that's just because of the bandwidth of mobile data as opposed to Wi-Fi. But all I've added to the board is the words taking care of our own. So let me just write it in the chat. Thank you. Okay, taking care of our own. So that's just the name of the current objection to the obligation to assist argument. Taking care of our own. So basically, here's the idea. Someone could say, I'm not obligated to assist the global poor or the international third world poor. If I have obligations to take care of and help anybody or anyone, it would just be a more limited set of people, namely my own. Now, who are our own? You could argue that, of course, you have obligations to care for and assist your own, like family, friends. And then if you wanted to expand the circle of concern a stage further, you might include the domestic poor within our own country, like the homeless and those that are living in conditions of poverty here. So the argument could be made that who we have an obligation to take care of and care for is not the whole world, because that is too expansive a set of people. It has to rather be those that we have a connection with, some type of bond or relationship with. And that could be our friends, family, fellow citizens, but that, some might argue, is the limitations of our moral obligation for assistance. Taking care of our own, but not further more than that. Okay, so that's one objection. Another objection comes from the idea of property rights. I'm going to write it on the board. Hopefully it's easier to read, but if it's not, I can put it in the chat too. Property rights. Property rights, another possible objection. The nature of this objection is to say that the argument says we have an obligation to give some wealth or money, right, to aid to the third world poor to assist and prevent some starvation and poverty. But you could argue that that is a violation that stands in the way of my property rights. My property rights entitle me to do whatever I want or don't want to do with my income and wealth. My income and my wealth is part of my property. Now, sometimes when people talk about property rights, they think of the things that you buy with the wealth, and that makes sense. Like if you have a car, that's your property that you bought with money. But the money itself sitting in the bank before you use it on goods or services is also your property because you've earned it through your labor. So you could say, I can't be obligated to give money, for example, to the poor, because that would be like saying I don't have the right to withhold my property for whatever purpose that I see fit. And since you have property rights, they do give you the right, as we say, to do what you want, even if it's something foolish and if it's not helpful at all. If I want to spend today $10,000 on a Rolex watch and then smash it with a hammer. This is not a smart thing to do. It'd be a poor use of my money, but I guess I'm free to do that because property rights entitle me to dispose of my property, to use my money frivolously or whatever, or to not aid if I don't want. So you could argue that there's another basis for rejecting the argument because property rights entitle you to not distribute money for any purpose you don't want. And then another possible objection is, well, there's two more that I wanted to mention. One is leaving it to the government. Leaving it to the government. Some people might say that it's not a moral obligation for the individual to give aid to charity or global aid. But if anyone or anything has such an obligation, it would be the state, the government. Now, there are valid reasons why this argument, this objection could be given. I've always thought of it as one of the more, clear and reasonable objections to this line of argument. Because even if you believe charity and assistance is a good idea, some might say it shouldn't be left to the individual to just depend on the whims of how charitable they are feeling, because that's unreliable and inconsistent. Someone could watch like a documentary about starvation in the third world and feel like, wow, I need to do something. And then the next day, they're watching like some kind of nihilistic action movie and they're like, man, nothing really matters. Who cares? Haha. So like, your feelings can kind of here today, gone tomorrow in terms of your disposition to be concerned with these issues. But if it was a public program that's funded by the taxpayer, then we're all mutually invested in it. There's a more reliable funding mechanism. Also, sometimes very wealthy people will use philanthropy to shield some of their corporate or business actions from scrutiny. And so you can also argue that there's oftentimes a little bit of dishonest intent or motive behind some of the wealthiest acts of charitable giving. I mean, that's a possible criticism anyway. So avoiding those problems would be just leave it to the government, and then it's not the individual's obligation. Now, one more possible objection is the triage objection. That one is that's a little complicated, the triage objection. It takes a bit longer, I think, to explain than just the 2 minutes that we have. But let me try and say a few things about it, and then when we return on Monday, I can make short work of the last few comments that he has in this essay, and then we'll quickly transition to the Garrett Hardin. So we're still on track and still on schedule. Without the couple minutes of delay, we would have been perfect today, but that's fine. So it's all good. One more objection is triage. Now, I'll explain just a few points about triage, and then we'll open with this on Monday and expand on it a bit. But triage is a medical policy that is implemented when you have mass casualty emergencies or just any scenario where there's a surplus of injured or sick persons and a deficit of available medical personnel or treatment. It's kind of like, in a way, the United States under the coronavirus pandemic, sometimes, we have fear that we would have to use triage policies if we get to a point where there are just too many sick people, not enough treatment facilities, not enough hospital beds. So when you have too many people that need treatment and not enough means to provide for them all at once, then you have to make tough utilitarian-minded decisions about how to ration off care to have the most beneficial life-saving impact overall. So suppose there was like a mass casualty attack, like a terrorist attack, the Boston Marathon bombing, something along those lines. It could be a natural disaster, but I'm just going with this example. So you arrive on the scene and you have, because a huge mass of people have all been hurt and injured all at the same time, the first wave of first responders are in a deficit. There's not enough of them to attend to each person and give specialized one-to-one care to each person that's harmed on the scene. So you have to basically divide people into 3 categories, hence the term triage, which has tri as a root, meaning 3. You divide them into the category of those that are so injured that they'll probably die no matter what you do, even if you try to help. On the other extreme, you have people that are injured, but so minor with the injuries that they'll probably survive even if they don't receive immediate attention. And then you have this core group in the middle that's all important, which are those where the attention is going to make all the difference between whether they survive or not. And so that's a group of people who will probably survive with assistance and die without it. So according to triage principles, you would not divert all of the precious, scarce medical resources to the worst injured population at first, nor to the least, because this is probably a lost cause, and while you're expending time and energy on them, there's a more critical group who could have been saved with the same effort in the middle. If you're focused on the least injured group, that's clearly not wise because they're probably likely to survive anyway. You have more urgent cases over here to their right. So in the same way, some argue that trying to help the global poor violates triage principles because it's like saying divert resources to those that are already in the worst case scenario of poverty and therefore likely not to be able to be extricated from it just by the aid. But there's more, I guess, a little more on that to say. So let's, adjourn for the weekend. Sorry for the momentary outage, but you guys seem to be able to get back pretty quickly. Thanks so much for your patience and all your hard work. I'll be in touch. I sent you the link for my office hours that are from 11 to 12 if anyone wants those for any reason. But for now, I guess, I'll let you guys go. Let me know, are we all together and you guys are good for the weekend now? Once I see that, then I'll let you go. Okay, perfect. So thanks again. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Be in touch. Okay, bye-bye.